talked in an earlier lesson about energy. We've just been discussing time. The third of our most precious personal leadership resources is attention. And briefly, I want to share with you two different models which should be helpful to you in assessing, maybe reallocating some of your precious resource of attention. And this is, as I'm sure all of us agree, particularly pressing these days when our attention is grabbed in so many different ways. From a world that is moving faster and faster to a whole range of digital devices and stimulation. The first of these tools comes from Mira Thomas, who wrote a short book in 2019 called Attention Management. And she also produced a matrix with 4 different quadrants in it. I'll just go through it briefly, but her matrix has 2 axes. The vertical or y-axis is control, that is, do we in fact control what we are attending to? And the horizontal or x-axis is attention. How much attention, in fact, are we committing? Are we really focused on what we're attending to? And quickly, as you can see on the screen in front of you, these 4 quadrants moving around her matrix move from lower left, which has us distracted, utterly reactive to what's going on around us. We're not in control. We're not really attending to whatever it is that we're engaging. When we are moving up to the upper left quadrant, when we have more control but we're not still really attending to our surroundings, that's what Thomas refers to as daydreaming. We have wonderful daydreams. They turn out exactly the way we want them to. We have complete control. But in terms of engagement with our world, in terms of engaging with whatever stimulation or sensory input, we're not really attending to the world or others around us. If we move to the upper right quadrant, we have a lot of control and we have a lot of attentiveness. And this is a quadrant that many of us would desire. This is about focus. This is about mindfulness, about where we are and what it is we're engaged with. Now, interesting for Thomas, it's not simply that elusive upper right quadrant that all people are after, because the lower right quadrant is something that a lot of creative thinkers, a lot of creative leaders, in fact, aspire to. This is the state of flow. And the flow state, as many will know from the work of Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, is in fact a state where we are locked in terms of our attention, our engagement with the world, but there's an improvisational quality. We're not necessarily in control of what it is that's going on around us, but we are in a way one with it. Rather than controlling, we are allowing creativity in many cases to happen. So part of what's interesting about Thomas's matrix is that, again, depending on situation and context, but especially creative context, many of us may want to aspire to either upper right, which is focused and mindful, or lower right, which is flow. In fact, what I would encourage you to do on your own worksheet is to take 20 different things that you devote or invest your attention to in a given day and plot them on this matrix. How many of them appear on the upper right, focused and mindful, or lower right, flow? Those are where most people want to be. We always have our moments where we want to be entertained and amused and distracted, and we don't have to invest too much energy. But what I would encourage you to do here is to take stock, take an inventory of where you're committing your attention, and if in fact you want more opportunities to be in flow, or to be focused and mindful, then make the decisions accordingly in terms of the allocation of your attention over time. Lastly, and quickly, I want to point to another model. It's very provocative. It was produced by a scholar named Nir Eyal. And Eyal has an interesting background when it comes to attention, because he actually wrote a book several years before his more recent book, which is called Indistractable. But his earlier book was written for and about the technology industry, about how they could secure people's attention. In other words, how tech companies producing devices or software applications could do more to lock in the attention of users, not let them move on from a given game or app or streaming opportunity. So if that was the previous book, in 2019, Eyal produced another book called Indistractable. And what he talked about here is how, in fact, we could, as users, and despite the best efforts of tech companies and certainly others around us, we could maintain our attention, or we could shift attention as appropriate. And the management that Eyal talks about is of attention, but he also raises what I believe is kind of fascinating provocation for the way we think about attention. Rather than talking about attention and distraction as opposites, he talks about attention being like traction. So yes, we can be distracted. Yes, we need to be concerned about the distractions in our lives from things that we really care about. But he wants us not to think in the traditional way about what we're attending to. He wants us equally to identify what are those things, what are those activities, who are those people, what is that learning that we may engage in that, in fact, allows us to enter into a state of traction. And he goes into this, as you see from the graphic image that you have, that part of what we want to do is identify the actions and the triggers for actions that either allow us to stay in a state of attention or traction with those things that we care about, that we prioritize, that give us a return on our investment of attention. But also we need to understand the actions and the triggers of those actions that lead to distractions, that take us away from what's important to us, that don't allow us to realize a meaningful return on the investment of attention. So again, I think it's a different way of getting at some of the same issues that Thomas has raised, and both of them require us to go through the important self-learning and self-understanding work of making an audit of how it is that we're investing our attention.